Hello, today I'm going to be showing you how to make the tote bag you saw using Bernat Baby Velvet. It's a very simple bag. These are the basic instructions for the pattern. The tote bag is going to be 14 by 10 by 6, as you see over here in this diagram. And for the main part, we're going to chain 62 and then half double crochet into our stitches for as many rows as we need until our project is 14 inches by 27 inches. And we're going to do something similar for the bottom and gussets, the handles, and the pocket. So this bag is made almost entirely of half double crochet. We're going to use single crochet to stitch the bag together. And to do that, we're going to use a 5.5 millimeter crochet hook and a 3.75 millimeter crochet hook. We'll be using the 3.75 millimeter crochet hook because our project is going to be filled with down stuffing. It's going to give it more of a plush look and feel. And some of the other items you will need are a pair of scissors, some pins, and probably a pin cushion, thread that will match the liner that you want to use, material that you would like to use for your liner. This is actually satin that's inside out right now. There's so much of it. I'll have to show it to you later in the video. Some quilting batting. This is just some leftover batting I had from a quilting project. I'll leave a link to all of these materials in the description box below. That way you can find them easily. These clothespins I use to hold my project together while I am making the connecting stitches to stitch it together. You'll need measuring tape, fabric measuring tape, some hand sewing needles, and an embroidery needle. I use a small one for baby velvet. You will also need a bag of down stuffing. I found down stuffing on Amazon, and I will leave again a link for you guys so that you can find these things easily. Okay, so for the main part of the bag, which I'm going to do first because it's the largest piece, and once you get through the largest piece, it's easier to do the smaller pieces. I'm going to grab this lavender lilac. Actually, this color is called Lilac Blooms, for those of you who are curious, in the baby velvet. I'm just going to make a chain of 62 using my 5.5 millimeter crochet hook. I used the 5.5 millimeter crochet hook for the first row because it makes the second row go a lot faster. Now that I have my chain of 62, I'm going to lay my work down flat on the table and grab my fabric measuring tape. And I'm just going to measure to see if I roughly have 14 inches. If I don't roughly have 14 inches, I'm going to add a few stitches or take away a few stitches depending on whether or not I have too many or too few. Then I'm going to pick my work back up again, and I'm going to put away my 5.5mm crochet hook because I won't be needing that for a while. And I'm going to insert my 3.75mm crochet hook, or you can just grab one, maybe a 4mm if that's all you have. And then I'm going to, you don't count the chain that's on your hook, but go count 2 chains back from your hook, 1, 2, and work into the 3rd chain, half double crochet. And then half double crochet into each stitch all the way down your work. And when you get to the other end, after you make your final half double crochet into the last stitch, chain 2, turn your work, and begin to half double crochet in between the posts of the row that we're crocheting right now. So I have completed that row, and I want to show you how to double crochet in between the posts, or half double crochet in between the posts if you don't know how. So I'm going to chain 2 and turn my work, and I'm going to open up my stitches and look for the space in between the posts of the half double crochets that I just made in the previous row. And I'm going to insert my hook right into that space, and I'm going to make another half double crochet. And I'm just going to do that again and again and again throughout this project. I chose this stitch because it is the tallest, fastest stitch that I can personally do. If there's a stitch that you know better, if you would rather do a double crochet, I don't really recommend a double crochet with the velvet, especially since we're going to be stuffing our project with down, because the down will escape between your stitches if you use a double crochet. So to avoid having so much down escape from your project, it's good to have a slightly shorter, tighter stitch. And going in between the posts also fills in any gaps between your stitches. And then, yeah, we are just going to continue making half double crochets in between the posts for each stitch in each row until our project is 27 inches tall, or long, or wide, however you want to say that. I say tall, because if you stand it up on the bottom edge, it's tall. So 27 inches tall. And then you will have your main piece complete, and we can meet back for the next step. So by now you should have crocheted your main piece, and it should measure 14 by 27. So go ahead and take your fabric measuring tape and measure your piece to make sure that it measures 27 inches. You might have to flatten it out all the way to make sure, because your bag is going to stretch a little bit. And I have 27 inches by 14. Now that I know that I have the right size for my main piece, I'm going to fasten off my yarn and weave in my ends. So after I make my last stitch, I'm going to chain 1 and pull up my yarn. And I'm going to pull up quite a bit. And then I'm gonna pull at least 6 to 8 inches of an end out and snip my yarn. Then I'm gonna fold this so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to pull that loop and just pull that yarn through and tighten up my knot. And I'm going to grab my small embroidery or tapestry needle, and I'm going to insert my yarn into the eye. And then I'm just gonna go down a row and insert my needle into that first stitch and work into the middle of my stitches. You can check on the other side to make sure that you're not going through the outside, because it will look sloppy if you do. And then pull it through, but don't pull it so tight that your yarn collapses or your project collapses. And then go down to the next row after that and just go back the opposite direction underneath your posts, making sure that your needle doesn't show through on the other side of your work. And then I'm going to go down to the next row and go back in the original direction from right to left underneath my posts, making sure my needle doesn't show through on the other side of my work. And then I'm going to go down to the row below that and put in a fourth. And since I have so much extra yarn, I'm gonna go down and do a fifth before I cut that. I'm just gonna pull my needle right on out and snip that yarn. And that's how you complete your main piece to your project. And so you should have, I have it folded up so you can't really see, but you should have just a 14 by 27 half double crochet rectangle. And if you had to join your yarn at any point, you can go through and kind of try to hide the knots in your yarn, or you can do that at the end when you sew your bag together. You can just make sure that those are on the inside of the bag. Just to break up the monotony of crocheting, I'm gonna go ahead and cut my liner and measure it to make sure that it is the same size as the inside of my bag. So I basically just take the outside dimensions of my bag and I use them to create my liner. So for the main part, I'm going to make a square that is, or a rectangle that is 14 by 27, because that's the same size that I will be crocheting for the main part. And then for the gussets, I'm not gonna use that measurement. I'm gonna come over here to my drawing and see I have 6 by 10. So I'm just gonna make 2 6 by 10 squares, which I already have here. I just need to measure them and make sure that they are what I expect them to be. So for the main part, I want it to be 14 by 27. Which it is. And for these two smaller, for the gussets, I want them to be 6 by 10. Which they are. It's okay if it's a little over. You can just sew that in when you sew the liner together. But now I'm gonna cut my batting. This is just extra batting that I had from other projects. I'm going to take my pieces of liner and just lay them over my batting to cut my batting out now that I know that those pieces are the right size. So I'm just gonna find where I have that much space. Don't mind my cat clawing the couch. And I'm gonna cut the batting just a hair larger than the liner. You don't need to make any special cuts. I'm not trying to do a great job here. I'm just trying to make the straightest lines I can that match what I have going for the liner. And then I'm gonna come over here. And I'm gonna do one there. And I'm keeping these together. After I get done sewing them, you'll notice that I am pulling them off of the cutting board together, because I'm just basically, I'm gonna pin these. I'm gonna put pins right where I have them laying right now. To hold the batting and the liner together. All right, I'm done with this batting. Now I have my pin cushion. I'm gonna pin these together. I'm gonna start by pinning an inch from the corner. Roughly. It doesn't have to be perfect. I just want to hold these together while I sew the liner and the batting. I'm gonna put one more in the middle. I'm using batting because I'm using down. If you're using polyfill instead, or if you're not using down, you can omit the batting if you want to, and your bag will be a touch softer. It won't be as rigid as it would be if you had used the batting. The batting will help your bag to stand up on its own a little bit more. If you would like to use it without filling, that's okay too. And I'm gonna make this liner nice enough that my bag could be reversible if I wanted it to be. So depending on your liner, you could also end up with a reversible bag. I'm gonna make mine reversible. I'm just putting pins in the corners and all along the open spaces so that my batting and my liner don't come apart when I'm sewing. My little, I have to crochet a new tomato for my pins. It just came apart. It's actually, I saw it coming apart earlier today and decided that I need to crochet a new pin cushion. Now how I'm gonna figure out where to lay these exactly is I'm gonna flip over everything so that it's face down. And then I'm gonna rotate these so that it's even up over here. And then I'm just gonna put my finger there lightly and rotate my fabric. And then I'm gonna rotate it this way to make sure that it works on the other side. And if it doesn't, I'm gonna adjust what I think is in between. And then I'm gonna rotate it back to the other side and check the other side. And it looks like it's about even. It looks like it's about in the middle. So I'm going to pin my work. I'm going to keep that in that place best I can and pull my work like this up so that I can see the liner. And then I'm gonna take the gusset and lay it over there, and making sure not to move anything, I'm gonna place a pin in the middle. And then I'm gonna place a pin in the sides. And make sure that you are sandwiching all 4 layers. You want your 2 layers of liner and your 2 layers of gusset, or 2 layers of batting that you have sandwiched in between here. So make sure that you count before you move on to the other one. And then I'm gonna repeat the same thing on the other side. That way I don't have to do any crazy measuring. I can just kind of slap things together, which is something that I would rather do than measure. If you prefer to measure to get this in the middle, by all means, go right on ahead. And then I'm gonna flip everything again. Make sure that I sandwiched in everything nicely. And then I'm gonna pull this corner back. My pin is in the way. You might have to move your pin out of the way. Pull this corner back a little bit so that you can get a good corner here. And then I'm just gonna put these together, making sure that I grab this corner. I'm actually gonna start at this corner, pinning right here so that I don't lose any of the materials that I have in the corner. I want to make sure that I get all of those sewn together. My dog has a squeak toy, so it's my cat and my dog here with me today. Sorry. It's life. And I'm just gonna do that for all 4 of the edges as neatly as I can, since I want a reversible bag. I don't want this batting to show, so I'm doing my best to tuck it back as I fold everything together. And I am having to move my pins away from the edge in order to do that. So if you need to move your pins, be careful just to make sure that you're still sandwiching all of your layers of fabric in there, because the next step is to sew all of these edges into an inside out purse shape. Daisy, you're being loud. Are you having fun, darling? I guess. Okay. So once I'm sure that I have all of my pins in here, I'm just gonna turn this right side out. And make sure that I have a lovely, gorgeous bag, basically, that I just need to sew together. And I am gonna do this on the sewing machine because it'll go a lot faster and it makes for a neater edge. So I'm gonna take you over to the sewing machine and just let you watch and see how I do it. For those of you who don't have a sewing machine, real quick, I can show you how I sew this by hand. So thread your needle and fold your thread over twice and make a knot in the end of your thread, or double knot. And then into a right hand corner, you're going to work from right to left into a right hand corner. Thread your needle, or put your needle through all 4 layers. You want 2 layers of batting and 2 layers of lining. Just pull it through. And then I'm gonna move my ring out of the way because I'm going to slide my thread around my hand and hold this knot down, and I'm gonna put my needle right back into that same hole I made, and I'm going to pull my thread through the center of my loop that I just created. And I'm gonna pull this relatively tight. And then my next stitch is gonna be as close as I can stomach sewing next to the stitch that I can, that I just made. So maybe like a 1/2 centimeter away, put in your next stitch and pull it through. I am pulling my thread around my hand and creating a big loop to stick my needle right in the center of. And then I'm pulling my thread through the center of that loop and locking down that stitch. And I am pulling this pretty as tight as I can go without breaking my thread or puckering my fabric. again, as close as I can get, like a 1/2 centimeter next to my last stitch. You can go closer than that and it'll be even better. I'm going about a 1/2 centimeter away from my last stitch, and I'm just shooting that needle through the center of that loop that I'm creating with my thread. Sorry about bumping the camera. Try to steady that. Okay. And I'm just gonna sew like that all the way down. I'm creating a lock stitch instead of just the roundy round stitch. I'm not sure what sewing stitches are called. I probably learned in home ec when I was a teenager or preteen, but I have long since forgotten the names of these stitches. I just call this a lock stitch because it locks itself down. I'm just threading, pulling the thread around my hand and creating a big loop and poking my needle through the center of that loop and pulling the thread through, and then it should lock itself down and you'll have a piece of thread that comes across the top. It's hard to see when it's red on red. Sorry about that. And I'm just going to repeat that all the way down. And I'm pulling this tight because your liner is going to take some abuse, especially if you wanted a reversible bag. You want this stitch to look as nice as possible on the outside, so take your time doing this. On the sewing machine, it's kind of easy to just throw in a straight line, but when you're sewing it by hand, you really kind of have to take a little bit of time and care. Not, you know, it shouldn't be tedious. If it's tedious, you're doing it wrong. It should go pretty quickly. I'm just gonna throw this swatch together for you guys. And I have a little bit of a pucker because I'm pulling this thread is just tight. I want it to be tight. But don't break your thread. If you feel like your thread's gonna break, that's tight enough. Stop. Oops. And then when I get to the end, I'm going to repeat some loops. So I'm gonna first insert my needle into the corner, making sure that I've got all 4 layers, 2 layers of batting and 2 layers of liner. And I'm gonna pull a lock stitch around that, and then I'm gonna do the same thing, but when the next time I put it through, I'm not gonna put my needle through all the way. Put your needle through halfway and stop. And then grab your thread and pull it 1 revolution around your needle, then pull your needle the rest of the way through. What you're doing is creating an end knot that you can cut with scissors and you can rely on it. I'm gonna make 1 more just to make myself feel better. Again, grab your thread with your right hand or your left hand if you're left-handed and make 1 revolution around your needle. Drop your thread and pull your needle the rest of the way through without poking yourself like I just did. And then you can cut this pretty short. You can leave about a centimeter tail. You can even weave in that tail if you want to. I'm choosing not to. Oh, I made my pin cushion. I crocheted a pin cushion. This is a tutorial by Hooked by Robin. I'll leave a link for you guys in the description box below if you were curious about that. I don't have the tomato anymore. So I'm turning my work inside out to check my stitches and make sure that they look nice and that I caught all of the fabric that I wanted to, even on the ends, which I did. And that's really all there is to it. If you have holes, you just make small stitches where your hole is. Like if your liner pops out a little bit, you can just turn your work inside out again and put your thumb where that hole is so you remember. And then say I have a hole right here where my thumb is. I'm just gonna remember that spot. I'm gonna grab my needle off my table and I'm just gonna stitch there again, you know. Uh-oh, I'm caught. Okay. I'll show you how to do a starting knot too, because I didn't make a knot at the end of my thread. I'm just gonna pull my loop around my hand again and put my needle through the center of that loop. Oops, I went too far. I'm gonna hold my needle and make one revolution just like the end knot around my needle to start. And that's how you can do a starting knot as well as an end knot if you just want to do it quickly. And then I'm just gonna stitch up my pretend hole here, you know, just the same way you stitched it before. You're just gonna make sure this time that you got your liner in all 4 layers. It's not a big deal. And then when you get to the end of your hole, you just create a knot again. 1 revolution around your needle and then pull your needle the rest of the way through. And then tug your knot down a little bit with your fingers. Cut your thread. And then turn your work inside out and check it again. You don't want to turn it inside out, back and forth too many times, because you can wear out your liner, especially if you're using satin. Satin tends to get like unhappy if you stretch it. But that's what my little swatch looks like, and that's how you hand sew your liner. Okay, so I'm just gonna use a running stitch, and I'm gonna make my stitch length as long as it will go. And I'm gonna start with the bottom of the bag and just sew along these seams. If you have a sewing machine, I suspect you will already know how to do this, but I'm just gonna show it anyway in case you just want something to watch. If you don't want to watch, feel free to go ahead and fast forward. And I'm also gonna make sure that I'm not sewing anything extra by accident. So I'm sweeping my hand along the inside to make sure that nothing is puckered anywhere. I'm gonna take this pin out because it's in my way. And I'm just gonna go to the opposite side of the bag and work the other bottom seam. So I'm sewing between the gusset and the bottom. And it's loud because I'm using satin. Satin is just, my needle is just, it bangs when I use satin for some reason. Okay. Looking good. So far, so good. I'm gonna continue up the sides of the bag now. And I'm gonna start at the bottom and move to the top for each seam. So starting at the bottom of the bag, the bottom corner, I'm gonna start sewing up the side of the bag. Now I'm gonna move to the other side again, starting at the bottom of the bag. And I don't want any holes in my corners because I'm filling this bag with down. A little hole might be okay, but you don't want too many of those because the down will come through. If you're using polyfill, not an issue. What's going on here? Okay. Now, starting, I had a pin in the way. I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. Now moving to the other side of the bag. And my seams are not perfect, you guys. Like, I am not a professional sewer. I'm not a seamstress. I'm not a tailor. I'm none of those things. I'm just a hobbyist, and I'm just throwing this together the best I can. Which is, you know, still fun to do. So now I've got some pins everywhere. Okay, I got all of the pins out. This is what the liner looks like. It just looks like the liner to a bag. It looks like it should. I hope yours is looking as nice. I'm really happy with this and the way that it turned out. None of my I'm checking my corners to make sure that I don't have any holes in my corners for down to escape. And then I'm gonna stand it up to make sure that it does that properly. And it does. And then don't worry about this top seam here. We're gonna take care of that when we actually attach it to the bag, when we get the bag completed. So yeah, that's what the liner looks like. I think it's so pretty. Now we're going to get started on the bottom and gussets of the bag. We're going to, similar to the main part of the bag, we're going to crochet a half double crochet rectangle, but this time we're going to make it 6 inches by 32 inches. Don't forget to go back to your 5.5 millimeter crochet hook to begin your starting chain. And the starting chain is 27 chains long. So go ahead and chain 27. Then when you've chained 27, switch to your 3.75 millimeter hook. Go to the second loop from your chain and make a half double crochet. Then proceed to half double crochet once into each stitch all the way down your chain. Then when you get to the end, chain 2 and turn, and half double crochet in between the posts of your stitches, just like you did in the main part. So first we're going to finish our second row, and then we're going to measure and make sure that we have a 6-inch piece of work. Okay, so I have crocheted my second row. Now I'm going to measure and make sure I roughly have a 6-inch piece of work, which I do. So now I'm going to continue half double crochet in between the posts of each stitch of each row until my work measures 32 inches. So go ahead and do that, and I will meet you back for the next step. Okay, so I have crocheted my 32-inch by 6-inch rectangle. Now that I have measured that, I'm going to chain 1, which I've already done, and pull up a loop, and then I'm going to pull out a little extra yarn and snip that off. Don't mind my cat clawing the chair in the background. Now I'm just gonna weave in my ends like I did last time. I'm gonna go down a row and work in between into the middle of the post. My cat just raced off into the other room. She's so cute. And I'm just gonna go back and forth 4 or 5 times. 3 is recommended. You can do 3 if you didn't cut enough yarn. I just like to do extra because it's a little more secure that way, and if it ever does come out, I am not worried because my stitches are way over here. I can just snip off the extra. Okay, so now we have our 6 by 32 rectangle and our 14 by 27 rectangle. And now I'm going to take these over to the cutting board and show you guys how to single crochet these together. You will need some clothespins or some other type of fabric clip. Okay, so I have here my 2 crocheted rectangles, my 3.75 millimeter crochet hook, 8 clothespins. These are mini clothespins. I'll leave a link to these in the description box so you know where to find them if you need them. And I have the yarn that I want to use to connect my two pieces. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out my large piece. Sorry, this kind of matches my cutting board. I'm going to lay this piece out and figure out what side I want to be the inside and what side I want to be the outside. So I want this to be the inside. Now, I'm gonna move this stuff out of the way, and I'm gonna turn my work this way. And I'm going to lay across, and again, you want to find your inside and your outside. Whatever side you think looks best will go face down on your cutting board. That'll be the outside. We're gonna sew along these edges here as soon as we get our project centered. We want to get this piece centered. So I'm gonna use doesn't matter. They both look pretty good. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take these corners and I'm going to match them up so that they're corner to corner. And then I'm just going to put a clothespin there. And then I'm going to match these up so that they're corner to corner, so that they're inside to inside as well. You don't want to like turn this so it's, you know, make sure everything goes together inside to inside. And put your clip on the corner. And then I'm gonna come around on this side and do the same thing. Now I'm going to, I'll come around the other way so I'm not blocking. I'm going to take one side in my forefinger and thumb, and then in the rest of the fingers, I'm gonna grab this other one, and I'm gonna make sure that they're even as best I can. And I'm just gonna pull it up and go like that. And then I'm gonna gently sit it back down, like so. And I'm going to place a clothespin right where it settled. You want to make sure that you're not moving your project when it settles down. You just want to set it straight down. If you feel more comfortable measuring to find the center, go ahead and do that. But I found that this way, doing it this way, works just as good. So I'm going to now release these four. Okay, so now that I have my piece centered, I'm gonna make sure that my clothespins are tight and they're not gonna move, because I'm gonna pick up my project and move it around very carefully. So I'm just gonna put my hand under the clothespins like this and put my finger right there, and I'm just gonna fold this over, and then I'm gonna lay it down so that's facing up, facing me, because I'm gonna work along this seam here. Now I'm going to take the yarn that I want to use to close this seam. I'm going to grab my 3.75 millimeter crochet hook and just insert it through both layers of my crocheted project, making sure that I am grabbing both, and I'm just going to slip stitch on through. And then into the very next stitch, I'm going to put a single crochet. And then into the next stitch, I'm gonna put another single crochet. And into the next stitch, another single crochet. I'm just gonna single crochet all the way down this seam as neatly as I can, because this is gonna show through a little bit on the bottom of my bag, and if anybody looks at the bottom of my bag, I want them to think I did a good job. So I'm going to do this very slowly, very carefully. I'm going to think about what I'm doing. I'm going to make sure that I'm not putting too much yarn through on the other side, especially since I'm using a different color that will show through. And that's it for this side. Okay, so I just finished my final stitch on that side. I'm going to chain one. If I can get in here next to this clothespin, I'm gonna chain one. Okay, and then I'm gonna pull up a loop and cut my yarn, and I forgot an embroidery needle, so I'm just gonna leave that for now. You want to fasten off that end. Then I'm gonna switch to the other side, and I'm basically just gonna repeat what I just did on the other side. You don't want to go around this corner yet, because that will make your work lopsided. You want to do this side and then come over and do the opposite side as straight as you can. And you can make sure that you're staying straight by looking at which row of stitches you are working into and working along the same row all along. If you find that your work is drifting into a different row, then you're working crooked. So just gonna pull my yarn through like I did before and make a slip stitch. And then I'm going to single crochet into each stitch all the way down. So go ahead and single crochet all the way down, and when you get to the end, chain one and fasten off your yarn and weave in your ends. And I will meet you back for the next step. Okay, so now that I have finished sewing or single crocheting the two pieces of my project together, I am going to remove my clothespins and set them aside. And then I'm going to, like I did earlier, place clothespins corner to corner on the top sides of my work. I'm just going to do it on one side for now because I'm going to sew or single crochet, not sew. So I'm just going to turn my work. It's okay that we move it around now that it's single crocheted together. And I'm just going to come over to this top corner and I'm going to single crochet around this outside seam and even along the bottom. Okay, so I got that side single crocheted together and I fastened off my yarn and weaved in my end. Now I'm just going to do the same thing that I just did on the other side of the bag so that we'll have a complete bag or a semi-complete bag. Next, we're going to be prepping the liner to sew it into the bag. So here I'm just going to ignore where this doesn't meet. And I'm going to come over here to the short side of the bag and fold it over so that it's neat. And I'm going to place a pin right there to hold it. And then I'm going to come over to the corner and as neatly as I can and as straight as I can get it, I'm going to fold that edge down. And then I'm going to go over to the other side and do the same thing. I'm just going to fold that over so that it's neat and pin it. I'm trying to get it even with the other side as well. I want this to be even all the way around. Coming over to the corner and folding that down. I'm actually going to come over to this corner too and fold that one down evenly and straight. And then I'm gonna look at the inside of my bag and make sure it's not uneven, because if it's uneven, I want to adjust it a little bit, which it is. Okay, I'm just folding down the corners as evenly as I can to each other without losing too much of my fabric. I just want to fold it over until it's a nice hem. I'm gonna check this one too. placing a pin in the middle of the bag. Then I'm going to go around to the other side and do the same thing. I'm just creating a hem seam or a hem to sew into the bag. Now I'm just going to place pins all the way around now that I've got it even and straight. Sorry that took a second. It does. Get enough pins in here so that this isn't going to move when you go to sew it to your bag. Because we're basically going to turn the bag inside out and slide the liner over the outside of the bag and sew it that way. Okay, we're ready to do that. Okay, so now we've got our liner, our bag, our sewing needle, our scissors, some clips if we need them, and some thread. So I'm going to turn my bag inside out, my bag, the purple part. I keep calling my liner the bag, but I mean my liner when I say that. Okay, now that I have my bag inside out, I'm going to decide what is my front and what is my back of the bag. And I'm going to do that based on where I had to join my yarn, if I have any knots anywhere, which I should have one somewhere, but since I can't locate it, maybe it's not a big deal. Okay. So I don't have a front and a back, but that's how you would decide a front and a back if you wanted one. And I'm just going to very carefully place my bag inside the liner so that it lines up. Oops, I got pins everywhere. So that it lines up on the inside seams. And it's not going to be perfect. You just want to get it as close as you can. I'm going to put another pin here. So count down 1, 2, 3 of your crocheted stitches, and just below the 3rd crocheted stitch, pin your liner to your bag. And then go over to the next seam and line up your seams and count down 1, 2, 3 crocheted stitches, and just below the 3rd crocheted stitch, place a pin in your bag, or pin your liner to your bag, I should say. Then go over to your next seam and match up your seams. Count down 1, 2, 3 below the 3rd crocheted stitch. Pin your liner to your bag. And for the final seam, count down 1, 2, 3 crocheted stitches and pin your liner to your bag just below the 3rd crocheted stitch. And then go in and just put in filler pins, making sure that you're lining up that 3rd crocheted stitch with the top of your liner so that you're even all the way around. And just pin your liner to your bag. And we're not going on the sewing machine for this, so don't worry about placing your pins far enough out. I found that sewing this on the sewing machine gave me a lot more puckers than I was comfortable to live with, so I'm going to sew my liner by hand. Most people wait till their bag is totally complete to put in the liner, but I find that the tote bag is easier to work with after the liner has been installed. It just makes it a little bit more rigid and it stands up on its own, so you can move it around and put your handles on and put your pocket on, and it stays pretty rigid when you're doing that. Oops, okay. I'm just putting in pins to fill in all of the spaces so that this won't move when I sew it. Okay. Now, if you want your reversible bag, here's a sneak peek at what it's gonna look like. You just don't have the shells on the top or the handles yet. Okay, so in the next step, we're gonna sew the bag. Okay, so I'm ready to sew in my liner, and I'm going to leave a space open that is about the size of my hand because I want to fill this bag with down, and I am gonna have a handful of down that I'm gonna want to stuff and move around inside the bag. So leave an opening that's about the size of your hand when you sew your liner to your bag at the back of your bag. You don't want to leave it on the side or any place weird. Leave it at the back where you would put like a tag or something. So at the back of your bag, start to the left of where your hole is going to be, or where your opening is going to be. It's just a temporary opening. We'll close it at the end. And then take your needle and put it in between your bag and your liner. And with your needle facing you, facing yourself, you're gonna just pop that needle through the liner and pull your thread through. You're just doing that to hide that starting knot inside in between. And then I'm gonna count down 1, 2, 3 stitches. And I fold this over to make it easier. I'm gonna find my thread, and I'm just going to wrap my thread around my hand so that I can create a lock stitch. And I'm just gonna pull that, oops, sorry about bumping the camera. Pull that as tight as I can. I should know better with this long thread. And then around my hand again, about a 1/2 centimeter away, I'm gonna sew a stitch, and I'm just gonna keep repeating that all the way around. Just make sure that you maintain your 3 stitches down so that your liner is even all the way around, and do this line of sewing as neatly as you can if you want a reversible bag. Even if you don't want a reversible bag, you want to do this as neatly as you can so that it looks nice. And make sure that all of your stitches catch all of your layers so that your liner isn't flopping around on the inside of your bag. And then another thing that you want to make sure of that shouldn't be too much of an issue because we're using velvet is you want to make sure that your red thread isn't showing through on the other side, or whatever color your liner is. You don't want that showing through. Make sure that you're only putting your stitches through one layer of your half double crochet. You don't want to be making huge stitches here. The smaller your stitches here, the better. The tighter your stitches here, the better. Just, you know, if you feel like your thread is gonna break, it's tight enough. And then, yeah, just go all the way around. Don't forget to leave an opening for your hand. And then when you get to the end, tie a knot in your, tie off your thread like I taught you earlier, making the revolutions around the needle. If you can't remember, go ahead and rewind and watch that again. And I will meet you back, and the next step, we will be stuffing the bag lightly with down. I know it seems early to be doing that, but the more rigid the bag is from this point on, the more it'll stand up on its own, the easier it will be to add our shell stitches, the easier it'll be to add our handles. I know that it sounds like it won't be, but it truly is. So I will meet you back. Okay, so we're done sewing the bag to the liner, and we have our hand-shaped hole here for the insertion of down, which we will be doing now. I've got my bag of down here. Before we start with the down, I just want to let you know that this is a really messy project. You'll have down pretty much all over the room that you're in if you're not very careful here. So just make sure that you shake all of the extra down off of your hands before you remove it from the down bag, and you just hold your hand together as best you can with the down. It's kind of hard because it'll come out between your fingers and everything, but this can be really messy, just fair warning. I'm going to put 4 handfuls of down into my bag. If you have bigger hands, I would do 3 handfuls. I don't want to overstuff my bag because then I won't be able to put anything in it. I just want to give it a little bit of fluff. And the handfuls that I'm putting in are pretty sizable. And I'm gonna lift up the bottom of the bag. Actually, I should have turned my bag right side out to do this. I'm silly. I'm gonna turn my bag right side out. I shouldn't lose too much down. Okay. So my bag's right side out. And now it's easier to move around the liner. Sorry about that. I didn't think of that beforehand. Here's my second handful. I'm just throwing it in here wherever there's space for down. And it's okay if the inside of your bag gets messy. You just turn it inside out afterwards over a trash can and shake off the extra down. It'll even come off of the velvet. You don't have to worry about that. How many handfuls is this? 3 or 4? I think that's 4. Oops, my table's moving. Sorry about that. Okay. Isn't this looking so beautiful despite the down everywhere? All right, so we've got our down in the bag. I'm gonna put another handful in because I'm not happy with the way that it's stuffed. I know that over time down will kind of escape from this bag through the stitches. I used half double crochet because that's probably the best stitch you could use besides a single crochet. You could use a single crochet for a bag like this, but I think that the half double crochet just looks better. That's just a personal opinion. It makes for a nice little kind of like zigzag, the half double crochet in between the posts. Okay, so now I've got my bag filled as much as I want. It's not too full. You don't want to have a stuffed animal. You just want a little bit of comfort when you hug your bag. And then I'm gonna pull off some thread from my spool and thread the eye of my needle and close that hand hole so that I don't have down escaping everywhere. And I'm gonna put a double knot in the end of my thread, just like before. And I'm going to start here and just finish closing that up. Make sure that you don't, that you keep things even, you know, stay with your third line of stitches. So when you finish closing that up, I will meet you back. Okay, I got all of the down, or most of the down, cleaned out of the inside of the bag, and this is what it looks like. It looks really good, you guys. I'm so proud of this. And then here's what the sides of the bag look like. You can pop out your corners. And now the next step, I'm gonna trim this little thread there that's sticking up. The next step is to add shell stitches along the upper edge of the bag, and I will show you how to do that now. All right, I've got my 3.75 millimeter crochet hook and my border color of yarn, which is white. And I'm going to find the stitch directly to the left of this last single crochet here. And I'm just going to insert my hook and slip stitch on through. And then into the next stitch, I'm gonna put 3 double crochet. If you don't know how to double crochet, don't worry. I have linked for you a great tutorial in the description box below. And then in the next stitch, put a single crochet. And then in the next stitch, put 3 double crochet. In the next stitch, put 1 single crochet. In the next stitch, put 3 double crochet. In the next stitch, put a single crochet. In the stitch after that, put 3 double crochet. And then just continue putting shell stitches all along the top of your bag until you come back around to where you started. You want shell stitches around this entire upper edge of your bag. So continue with that repeat and I will meet you back. So here is what our bag looks like with shells on it. I think it looks pretty cute. Okay, so our next step is to make handles. And to make handles, we're going to chain 14 with our 5.5 millimeter crochet hook. And then I'm going to grab my measuring tape and I'm going to measure this to make sure that it's roughly 3 inches, which it is. I'm going to switch to my smaller crochet hook. And into the second loop from my hook, I'm going to start to half double crochet back on down the line. Just like you did in the main part and the bottom and the gussettes, we are going to create a rectangle that is 3 inches wide by 39 inches long. So you're going to half double crochet back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until you have a strip of crocheted fabric that is 39 inches long. And go ahead, while you're at it, crochet 2 of those. So 2 rectangles that are all half double crochet that measure 3 inches by 39 inches. And they're going to go around the front of our bag like you see in the diagram here. So here we have our 2 handles and they both measure 3 by 39. I have verified that. I am sure that is the size that both my handles are. And now I'm going to set this aside. We're not going to do anything with the handles right now. Alright, so we're going to make one last rectangle. This is going to be a 6-inch by 6-inch rectangle. I am going to start by chaining 27 with my 5.5 millimeter crochet hook. And then I'm going to measure that chain to make sure that it is roughly 6 inches, which it is. Then I am going to switch to my 3.75 millimeter hook and half double crochet on down the line and up every row until my work measures 6 inches by 6 inches. And then I will meet you back to show you how to put in the top border of your pocket. Okay, so we've got our 6 by 6 square and we chained one, fastened off our end, wove in our yarn. Now, just like we did around the top of the bag, around the top of the pocket or along the top of the pocket, we're going to place shell stitches. So I'm going to insert my hook into this right hand corner, pull my yarn through with a slip stitch, and then in the next stitch I am going to put 3 double crochet, And then into the stitch after that, a single crochet. Into the stitch after that, 3 double crochet. And then I'm putting these between the posts. In keeping with my pattern. So yeah, continue putting shells along the top of your pocket, and then when you get to this corner of your pocket, you can chain 1 and fasten off your yarn and weave in your ends. Since I'm making a reversible bag, I'm going to make sure that my handles, when turned inside out, are gonna match the inside of my bag. So I'm gonna line the inside of these handles with these 3 by 39 inch strips of satin. I'm going to pin them and sew them to the inside of my handles. And this might be a little tedious, but it'll be worth it in the end. I have faith. So I'm going to lay the satin across the center of the handle, and I'm gonna place a pin. And I want to place this pin so that I'm on my 3rd row of stitches, just like we did for the bag. So count 1, 2, 3 stitches, and then that's where you place your pin. And then for the other side, I'm just gonna fold this under to where it's 1, 2, 3 stitches in, and then I'm gonna place a pin there as well. And I'm gonna pin it like that all the way down, making sure that I catch the seam. And I'm even gonna put an extra pin here because this part is coming out and wanting to flip over. And so yeah, I'm gonna do that all the way down for both my handles. So I've got the first one pinned, And that's what it should look like. I'm going to go ahead and do the second one, and then I'm going to sew along this seam here and up this seam here by hand, and I will meet you back. Okay, so here's what the inside of our handles look like, and this is what our pocket looks like with the shells on it. And now the next step is to attach the handles and the pocket. So I have the front of my bag facing up, and I'm just gonna take a handle and make sure that it's not twisted around. And then I'm gonna line it up with this seam that I created earlier with my single crochet on the other side of the bag, on the inside of the bag. I'm going to line up my handle with that seam, and then I'm going to come over to this side, and I'm going to count 1, 2, 3 stitches, and I'm going to place pins into my handle at that juncture. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, and line up with that bottom seam best I can. And I'm going to place a pin all the way through. And then I'm just going to work my way up the side. It helps if you put your hand inside the bag and stay along the same row of stitches to make sure that you are keeping your work straight. I'm going to come to the top of the bag and place a pin just to make things easier on myself. If you have extra long pins, they are helpful here. Otherwise, just do the best you can with the pins that you got. Okay. And then we're going to come over to the other side and do the exact same thing. I'm going to line up with this bottom seam, and I'm going to count 1, 2, 3 stitches over and place my work. And then I'm just going to put a pin right there. And then I'm going to go up to the top. And I'm going to count over 1, 2, 3 and place my work. And put in a pin. And then I'm going to stick my hand in the middle, count over 1, 2, 3. Place my pin. And those are the main pins. Now I'm gonna grab my pocket, because when we sew these center seams, we're gonna sew our pocket in at the same time. You might have to stretch your pocket out a little bit, but we'll get there. It's not a far distance. Okay, so to place your pocket, line it up with the bottom seam and both of your handles. It should fit right in there pretty straight. And we're going to attach these handles and this pocket with single crochet. So when you're done pinning, go ahead and grab that crochet hook, the 3.75 millimeter crochet hook. And I am using white yarn to attach everything. And to begin, I'm gonna run single crochet along my bottom edge. I'm going to make sure that my handle is placed nicely. Then I'm going to insert my hook through the handle and the bag, through 2 stitches, and I'm just going to, oh, this is the hard part, slip stitch on in, and then I'm gonna single crochet on down. Just into the next stitch, single crochet. Into the next stitch, single crochet. And every stitch that you make, you're gonna check and see that you are making a straight line, that you're staying in the same row. That little piece of red that's sticking out, we're gonna cover that up in a second. We're just gonna single crochet right over it. Now, pull your pocket and your handle right next to each other and make your final single crochet in the handle in the bag, and then make your very next single crochet into the pocket and the bag. We're just gonna run straight on over. And then when we get to the other edge of our pocket, we're going to do the same thing with the other handle, just in the opposite direction. We're just going to attach this pocket right to those handles. Don't forget to check your work and make sure it's straight. These outside stitches are really noticeable noticeable, especially if you use a different color, a contrasting color of yarn. So you want to take your time and do these right. I'm gonna get my flowers out of the way here. Move my pincushion. Sorry about my squeaky table. I'm trying not to move it. We're almost to the edge of the pocket. Might have to stretch things together here. That's okay. Once it's all sewn, it's gonna look really great. Trust the process. All right. So I'm putting my last stitch into the corner of my pocket on the left-hand side of my pocket, and then I'm just gonna run the next stitch right into my handle, right up against that pocket as close as I can get. We're gonna get even closer when we do these stitches in here. So be prepared for that. Those are probably the most difficult stitches of the bag, but they're very worth it. And then when I get to this corner, I'm gonna make sure that my stitch goes all the way down to the bottom so I don't have a rounded corner, because that's not what I want. And then I'm just gonna turn my work and I'm gonna go up the side of my bag right here. And if it helps, squeeze your work together like so, like you got a sandwich. And just work up the side, making sure to stay on your third stitch from the edge. Don't leave that row, because then you'll have a lopsided handle and it won't look good. So go ahead and go up the side. And then when you get to your edge here, I will meet you for the next step. So I am at the top corner of my bag where I promised to meet you. And I'm at my shell, so I'm just going to single crochet through my shell like it's just a regular half double crochet. And then I'm gonna make a single crochet at the corner of my bag, or at the corner of that corner of my bag and the handle where they meet. And then I'm going to admire my work here for a second. And then I am going to proceed making shell stitches just like we did along the top of the bag and the top of the pocket. But this time we're going to do it along the outside of the handle until we get to this other side where the handle meets the bag again. So we're just going to put shell stitches on the handle only, where it has left the bag, where it hangs over the bag. So into my first stitch here, I'm going to put 3 double crochet. Now I'm going to pop a single crochet into the next stitch, into the stitch after that, 3 double crochet. Single crochet, 3 double crochet, single crochet, 3 double crochet, and single crochet, and repeat that all the way until your handle meets your bag again, and I will meet you back. So here I am finishing up my last shell. I'm going to single crochet one last time before I stick my hook through the bag and that shell underneath, or the handle and that shell underneath. I'm gonna, before I make my stitch, I'm gonna count 1, 2, 3 and make sure that I'm lined up properly over here. Then I'm gonna commit to my single crochet. And then hopefully by now you can see how useful the down is inside the bag. You can pretty much manipulate this bag into any shape that you like while you sew it. So I'm just going to, like I did on the other side, single crochet down this seam until I get to the very bottom. Just sewing right along. Some of these stitches can be difficult. Just go slow. Look where you are. Make sure that you're staying lined up with your 3 stitches. So I have reached my bottom corner, and I ended by single crocheting right on top of my slip stitch that I began with. And then I chained one, and we'll pull up my yarn, cut it, find my embroidery needle wherever it went. I'm gonna weave in my end. Oh boy, the velvet's giving me a hard time with this tiny needle. There we go. I'm gonna go to the bottom of the bag underneath my handle to do this weave in. I can snip this one because it's already woven in, just to get it out of the way. And do my back and forth, cut my yarn, and have a look at our work. Look at that handle. It's halfway done. We're almost there. We're getting there. We just have to sew these two seams and attach the back handle, and we're home free. Now we have arrived at the most challenging part of the bag, but it's only 12 inches. That's all you have to do. That's all that's hard, is 12 inches. You can do it. So to begin, I'm gonna stick my hand inside my bag and poke up this fabric through here, because I'm gonna sew through all three of these, or I'm gonna crochet through all three of these with my 3.75 millimeter hook. I'm gonna pull these closer together, and then I'm gonna do that again. Now I'm gonna pinch and put my little tiny clothespin here. And my little tiny clothespin there. And my little tiny clothespin here. Now I have sort of free hands. I don't have to hold that. If you have full-size clothespins, those will probably work even better. They might get in the way a little more, but I mean, they'll hold this thick fabric. My little tiny clothespins are struggling. All right, so I'm gonna start by inserting my hook through the pocket, through 2 layers of the bag, or 2 stitches of the bag, and through the handle. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches on my hook. Sorry, my camera is wobbly, I bumped it. Now I'm going to pull my yarn through all four. And then I'm going to slip stitch that on in, and then I'm just gonna start to single crochet through all four stitches all the way up, going through the pocket, the bag, and the handle. I'm gonna move this out of the way now that I've got some stitches in. Pocket, bag, handle, single crochet. Pocket, bag, handle, single crochet. Pocket, bag, handle, single crochet. All the way till you get to the top of your pocket, and then just proceed with single crochet up the rest of the handle till you get to the top of the bag, and then we're going to make shells around the handle until we get to this side of the bag, and then we're going to single crochet to this point, and then we're going to do the hard part again. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that and meet you back. Now I have flipped over to the back side of the bag and pinned on my handles, and I am ready to begin to single crochet up the side, shell stitch around the handle, single crochet back up the other side, single crochet along the bottom of this handle, single crochet up the inside of this handle, shell stitch along the inside of the handle, single crochet along the inside of this handle, and single crochet along the bottom edge of this handle until you get back to the beginning, where you will single crochet over your starting slip stitch and chain one to end. So just like we did for the handle on the front of the bag, we're going to do the exact same thing minus the pocket. So super easy. So go ahead and do that and I will meet you back. Okay, so it's hard to get the whole bag in the frame and try to shrink it down. So there are a few optional things you can do with your bag. The first optional thing that you can do is you can stuff your handles with down or polyfill, whichever you're using. You just go in through this hole here and then you stitch it up when you're done with, you want to use thread because there's fabric here. So needle and thread, not crochet hook. And here, and here, and here. But I don't recommend doing that if you want a reversible bag, because then the inside of your bag, when you turn it this side out, will be very rigid and awkward, and your bag will, you won't be able to fit as much stuff in it. So another optional thing we can do, since we want a reversible bag, I have down all over the place here. Is we might want to hide or camouflage this seam right here, which I am going to do. I'm going to add some pearls along this seam. And I'm going to be using some wildfire bead weaving thread. I will leave a link for this in the description box below so that you guys know where to find it. I have my bead weaving thread threaded onto my sewing needle, and I have made a double knot at the end. Now I'm gonna look for the front of my bag, and then I'm gonna turn so that I'm working toward the front of my bag. I'm gonna start at this seam here between the back of my bag and the gusset. I'm gonna insert that needle and pull it all the way through. And then I'm going to wrap my thread around my needle one revolution and pull it through to make sure that I have a good strong connection here, because I don't want my beads flying off on me someday. All right, then I'm going to make one more stitch around my finger like I have been doing this entire time. Alright, now I'm going to add a bead. I'm using these pearlized beads that come from Walmart. Then I'm going to turn my bag this way so that I'm looking into my bead, and I'm going to insert my needle underneath it and come back out as close as I can to my last stitch. I'm just going to make a loop around that bead and secure it down. Then I'm going to come over here and make a stitch. Just right around the bead. We're going to disguise our thread behind the beads. So add another bead. Go underneath your bead and up through your last stitch. Pull that bead down taut. Now come in front of the bead and make a stitch. Oops. Put your hand in there to make a loop. Add another bead. Go under the bead and up through your last stitch. And come around, make a stitch. And one more time, add a bead, insert your needle underneath the bead and come up as close as you can to your last stitch. Pull that bead taut. Come around and make a stitch in front of the bead to lock it down. And I'm going to do that all the way around my liner until I have beads all the way around, disguising the seam here. So I will meet you back to show you what that looks like.